on free will and mind control. All right, so this one's a little strange, but bear with me. We'll get through it. So, free will. Everybody thinks they have free will, but in reality, most of the time, if not all of the time, it's a post hoc rationalization of an action. So, if I go to prove that I have free will by saying, like, I move my right arm up and down, and that's my proof that I have free will. But did I really make that decision? What drove me to make that decision? Well, it was the act of proving that I was free to make that decision. Well, then what if I went to move my arm and it wasn't there? That expectation, there's a cognitive expectation that my arm's going to be there, and sort of a whole whack of underlying processes that lead to me being able to move my arm. In terms of like reactions in the brain and muscles and everything else. So it's not sort of like an individual choice. It's not really a free will or a free action. And the fact that you're doing it to prove that you're free to do it is in a way proving that you're not free to do it, because it's like the only reason you're doing it is because of some sort of outside force or conversation internally. Um, but that one's a bit more esoteric. So let's get a bit more concrete. So if we have free will, then you should be able to control your thoughts, control what pops into your head, and control things that bother you, and control your emotions, and control your reactions to things. And you really can't. We all try to, we all work on it, but that is sort of the human condition, is that constant sort of battle with uh, ourselves, in a way, controlling our thoughts and impulses and um, desires and self-destructive behaviors and all that kind of stuff. If you really had free will, why would you choose, why would anyone choose to get addicted to a drug or a video game or a TV or something? If you were free, really had free will, you should just be able to say, I'm not going to do that, and not do it. But you're driven to do it by other factors in your brain, brain chemistry and dopamine and a whole bunch of things. Addiction's super complex, but realistically, it's not a free choice. Same with bad choices we make. Why do you make bad choices? If you have free will, then you should never really make a bad choice. You can make an uninformed choice, or like a bad decision, buying a stock that goes down or something like that. But if you have free will, then, you know, why did you, or why did the gambling addict bet his house on the stock market versus a controlled and regular investment? Or why would, we've all done something where you're like, what the fuck, why did I do that? You have no reason for it. And that's because we don't really have free will. We're not really in charge of our actions as much as we like to think we are. What we do is we rationalize things after they happen. So we tend to come back to an action with this mentality of, that was my decision. Like, I chose to do X or Y or Z. And we sort of like convince ourselves that it was a conscious decision, when in fact it really wasn't. you were sort of just on autopilot, and that's the way things are. But that is the way the human works. Like discipline wouldn't be a thing if we had free will. You wouldn't need to discipline yourself to do things. You wouldn't need to have motivation. You wouldn't need all of these other things that whole industries are built around. Motivation industries and self improvement and self help and all this kind of stuff is built around getting people motivated to do stuff that's good for them. But if you have free will, that should just be like, it's good for me. I'm going to do it and go do it. It shouldn't be a battle with yourself, right? Because it's, there's no sort of downside to it. And why is there that internal battle that we all face, when you're staring at a piece of cake or something that you want to just eat, and it's bad for you and you're on a diet and whatever, but then you go ahead and eat it, and then afterwards you're like, why did I do that? You gave in to some craving, but where did that craving come from? That is where this lack of free will concept lies, is in that sort of like, why do we do what we do? How can you really justify your actions? And how do you know, did you really decide consciously to do every little thing you've done today or yesterday or the day before? And, where do you draw the line? So if I say, yeah, I'm free because I have the freedom to move my hand, how is that really an indication of free will? Or counter argument, then what happens when you say move my arm and it doesn't move? So like you're paralyzed or something. Does that mean you don't have free will now? Because you're unable to move your arm? Is that really the litmus test that we're going off of? But really it is just unconscious things happening based on just the multitude of factors that are out of our control that sort of put us where we are. So no one is really responsible for their failures or successes. And that is kind of liberating in a way, kind of interesting. It's there's people in jail for crimes that you sort of ask yourself, like, why would they do that? Why would they commit these horrendous acts? And it's like, well, they're not really in control of themselves the same way the rest of us aren't. We're sort of unconscious actors. We're conscious. Our consciousness is along for the ride almost in this sort of day-to-day living, like what's happening and what you do or don't do throughout the day is just, we're sort of just riding along with that. And if you had a time machine and you could go back and put yourself back in the exact same position with the exact same prerequisites and factors in place, chances are any decision you make, you would make the exact same decision because everything's the same. It's all just chemicals and neurons firing and, upbringing and everything else. You don't choose to be born. You don't choose to where you're born. You don't choose any of those preconditions, and those things have massive impact on your life outcome. In terms of free will, especially, did Elon Musk choose to be born to like a rich family and have the successes and opportunities he was given to succeed and become rich? No, that's not a choice. He didn't choose that. He doesn't deserve it any more than anyone else. It's just a roll of the dice. And yeah, he put in work, but the reason he put in work was because of all of these other factors and all these things that you put anyone else in that exact same scenario, it would come out the same way, but you'd have to be exactly the same. That's the key. But there is no sort of decision tree that you follow that gets you somewhere. It is just random. There's no really free action or free will or free thought. We're really good at rationalizing things after the fact, but yeah, it's kind of spooky. It's weird. When you really start to think of it, it gets kind of weird and it's strange, but the concept of free will is not existing is both freeing because you don't have to be guilty about your actions and hold yourself to this like super standard, but then on the other hand it's also like a little scary in that you don't really have a choice in how things turn out. So it is just a strange kind of philosophical ideal, and then leading into mind control. So if you have free will, me telling you not to think of an elephant right now, you should not have just pictured an elephant in your head. Chances are the image of an elephant popped into your head when I said elephant. The fact that I'm speaking and you're hearing, it's impacting your brain, impacting your mind. I'm controlling your mind. I am taking over a portion of your brain. Yes, you can turn me off and shut me out, but that's also kind of me controlling you because now I've forced you to turn me off because you don't want to be controlled. You know, but me saying elephant and you just picturing elephant or hearing the word, don't hear the next sentence. Don't hear what I just said. I just said it. You heard it. You can't not hear. You can't choose to not hear. So like literally I'm like impinging on your brain, impinging on your mind. But this whole mind control idea in terms of free will, it gets a little bit more interesting when you look at things like sort of marketing and how far advanced the consumer targeting has gotten with AIs and things like Facebook and Google and their massive data pools and just targeted ads. So chances are a lot of the stuff that you're buying or purchasing, you never chose to buy. It was advertised to you, and that need was manufactured or massaged into place. So obviously like food and everything else to survive, yeah. But what makes you choose the difference between two different brands of cheese? Or what makes you choose between cereal brands or pop brands or whatever? Like it's all stuff that's over time your advertisers and marketing agencies and everything else has pulled the strings and manipulated and basically like stitched in this identity that you have, that we all have, that is really just them playing us to earn money and mind controlling us. And it gets more insidious when you look at the level of detail they get from digital applications. So, we all have that experience where you're thinking of a product or you're scrolling on Facebook and you see, let's say, an ad for camera gear, whatever. And you're like, I don't need camera gear. I'm not even into photography. And then you go to, Google and you search something and camera gear keeps coming up and it's slowly being fed into your mind, trickled in. And you're watching videos and on YouTube and the next suggestions are camera setups and beginner photography courses and all these kind of things. And slowly but surely you start to think, maybe I want to get into photography. That's kind of neat. And you can actually track it, but you can manipulate people into buying something they never intended on buying so subtly and get them into a hole where they end up buying camera gear. They go from having zero interest in photography or videography to buying camera gear. And you can handhold them and massage them all the way through that trail based on all the little data points that you pick up and based on little subtle nudges here and there throughout the day. If somebody's on their phone and on the computer, and you just track this little pixel and you tell them little subtle nudges, just like if someone's, oh, I don't want camera gear because it costs money and it's just a silly hobby, then you start to suggest YouTube videos that are like how I made $2,000 on YouTube. Here's the gear you need to make money on YouTube, or here's the gear you need to become a part-time videographer and make money. Just little things, and then you're like, oh, I can make money doing that. That's weird, interesting. Oh, look how easy it is. And you can just slip these suggestions in addition to just feeding the ads, that it gets to a point where the person ends up making a decision to get into this new hobby and they feel like it's their decision. But in reality, they were just puppeted into it. Now, that's an extreme case, and that's not always what happens. But you can do that. It is a known thing that does happen and has happened, and it is like an ad campaign kind of thing where you just sort of slowly steer somebody into getting into something they had zero interest in based on just their just targeting them and steering them towards these things and pointing out how cool it could be or whatever. And that's straight up mind control. And it's done to get us to spend money. But what's even more interesting is now it's being done automatically by artificial intelligences or machine learning algorithms that are designed to sell you stuff better or to get you to spend money on stuff that you don't need. And they're sort of puppeting us. It's like it's weird to think about, but it's like the AIs have almost like taken over and we didn't even realize it. But they've taken over and their only goal is to just get us to buy stuff. We're the little meat puppets at the end of the strings of these AI overlords, but they don't want to take over the world. They don't want to kill us all and destroy all humans. They just want us to, spend money on shit we don't need. So thankfully, yay. But yeah, it's crazy to think about how we're all sort of manipulated and mind controlled, and how we've gone from that sort of television advertising, and it's always been the case, like television, print, all that kind of stuff is all subtle little mind control and little manipulations and little things like that. But with the digital era and with that constant data feed, you can get really detailed and really crazy things. And you could, if you were so inclined, you could convince somebody through just manipulating things to get into a hobby they had zero interest in, or to buy something that they had zero interest in before. Like I'm not saying that I've fallen victim to it, and I work in marketing. This is my bread and butter, and I still fall victim to it. Like I've seen I'll see an ad on social media and be like, that looks really neat. But the thing is, and this is the trick that they've kind of, because I'm generally, I don't buy stuff for myself. There's the only stuff I buy for myself is like sort of camera gear, to use the previous example, but in my case, legitimately like camera gear or like film gear or whatever. But so I'm getting ads for that shit, which is like obvious to me. Like obviously, I'm searching best whatever camera 2021, and then now I'm getting ads for cameras. Yeah, that's an obvious connection. But what's crazy is that I was getting ads for kind of neat little jewelry pieces. I'm not into jewelry. I don't like jewelry. But then I was like, oh, wait, my wife would really like this necklace. So I ended up buying a necklace that I saw on an ad for my wife. They weren't targeting me. They were targeting me to spend money, but they were targeting me to spend money on a gift. Like the ad, like they fully knew, and they can see the connection, right? Like they know that, you know, I'm married to my wife, and it's an easy connection to make, and they see her interests, so now they're trickling her interests to me, and I'm getting little ads for stuff that she might like to buy gifts for her. So that's kind of crazy too. And it totally, like, I thought like it was a cool gift and whatever, and that's how they can get me with money, because I won't spend money on myself, but like I'll be like, oh, this is a nice gift, she would love that, so I bought it for her, and it was nice and it's cool and whatever. But it's also like, I had never thought to buy that. I didn't know that was out there. And that's where you can argue about the good or bad, is it's like advertising gets products in front of people. And like, how would you know something exists without ads? But it also manipulates people into, and when I say mind control, I mean, I don't feel like I'm being overboard with that. That is legitimate mind control. You are pushing someone to do something they would not otherwise do. And that comes back to where we started with the idea of free will. So if you have so much free will, why do you wear the clothing brands you do, or the shoe brands you do, or the car brand you buy, or whatever? Like, where does that come from? And you could say, oh, it's a quality car, but why is Ford quality? What makes Ford quality? Oh, I've bought a couple Fords and they were good. Have you ever bought a different car? Have you tried a different brand and it was bad? You know, like, realistically, it's all kind of the same. Like, I could buy a Ford or a GM or a, I don't know, Kia, depending on the vehicle, and realistically, it's all gonna kind of wash out the same in terms of averages and whatever. And yes, you can research and see what's best, what's the best this, what's the best that, but a lot of the time people move to certain car brands just out of sort of an ad loyalty thing. And like, a good example is the Ford. Like, Toyota makes really good trucks, but people like to buy Ford trucks more than Toyota trucks in North America, because the advertising of Ford as this like tough, manly man kind of truck, whereas Toyota in North America is seen as like the family car, or like something like your mom drives, or like something like a little race car or zip car. We don't, the brand in North America for Toyota isn't tough, manly truck. It's driving the kids to soccer practice. Whereas the brand for Ford in North America is built Ford Tough, is their like logo, and it's like towing trailers and shooting guns and driving through mud. You know, like, it's a bunch of shit, but realistically, Toyota trucks are probably outperform Ford trucks on a lot of different a lot of different metrics. But people still lean on that Ford because of just the advertising, right? So it's like subtle mind control, subtle free will manipulation, and the fact that we don't have free will, and it's kind of crazy. I don't know. It's just something I wanted to talk about and bring up, and it's a cool topic that's been on my mind, and I wanted to rant about it. So that's the podcast for this week. Is how we don't have free will and how we are all victims of mind control. So do with that what you will. Anyways, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.